to know what I'm getting into.
Yes.
Yeah. And nothing can stop me.
No.
'Cause I'm addicted to what you and I realize. Lead the way, I follow. No need to say where we are heading now, babe. I follow to the edge of it all. So tell your good night, 'cause I'll find no better one. Yeah, susceptible now before the moment flies, before it flies. So tell your good night, 'cause I'll find a better one. Susceptible now before the moment flies. In this moment,
Yes.
I cannot say what's wrong or right.
No.
It's not hard to fool.
What's up, guys? I'm Rob, and I'm the vet.
Hey, I'm Murph. And I'm the maintenance man.
What's up, guys? It's Shay. You know, I'm the girl. I'm sort of still the noob, 1 year out. Welcome to the Waiting Table Podcast. Welcome.
Hey,
You're so snazzy
up?
today, man. I like it.
Hey,
I
you
like
know.
it.
trying to, present.
Looks like you're going to like prom or something, like very
Oh,
fancy.
Yeah, I mean, I went skateboarding yesterday and, had my prom pictures and my senior pictures yesterday. And
You're reliving your teens. I love it.
I
That's like the
am. I
equivalent of
am.
prom. It's like I went longboarding, so it's sort of like prom, but
Yeah, I just feeling young and feeling good. And I thought I'd bust out the old vest. I've only worn it once, so I want to
Hey,
get some
man.
use out of it.
feeling young, feeling good's the way. And it's a
Yeah.
great episode to discuss that. Thank you guys for joining us on our third episode of March Madness on the Waiting Table Podcast, where we have roundtable discussions about the hottest topics in weight loss with, of course, the coolest people from the bariatric community. I'm Rob, this is Murph, we got Shay, and we got you guys. So grab a chair, wind down from your busy day, and take a seat at the table. Murph, we're on our final week of March Madness, and we've been doing podcast galore. It's the third of ours at the table in 2 weeks, and of course, the one last night with the lovely ladies on the Road to Discovery podcast. How are you holding up?
I'm after getting into bed about 1:30 last night, and then getting up kind of early. I slept in a bit, but I've had my shot of espresso, working on an energy drink now, trying to stay hydrated and feeling good. Feeling good. Just took a quick shower and I was like, oh man, we gotta go. We gotta roll. So I told the kids get out of here and let's we gotta get started. So yeah.
I'm
Love
curious
it.
to know what a doctor would think about all those energy drinks and staying hydrated and
This isn't a
Oh,
usual thing. It's just for March
intervention
Madness.
time.
April, as soon as April comes, yeah, no, it's just to get through this week, really. And I don't typically drink energy drinks. It's just I didn't want to chug my water because I know I'll be chugging,
Right.
and
I,
so I didn't
I
want to bring
usually
a
say the
water.
same thing whenever a doctor's around. I'm like, oh, energy drinks, never.
no,
Yeah,
Why would I?
I
Let me just get my water here.
I'm totally messing, but I feel like that's
I
gonna be
know.
a good segue into our special guest. Nobody's here for
Yeah.
us. we've been promoting Dr. Morgan. He's one of the coolest people I know. So Dr. Chris Morgan, he is an internal medicine and pediatric physician, which means he sees cradle to grave everywhere in between. I've gotten to work with him personally for almost 10 years, believe it or not. We're both, I think our 20th birthdays are just coming up, right? Well, we'll hear from Dr. Morgan, but we started when we were really young. But yeah, so I just really value his input. He's been a practicing physician for over 30 years, and him and I have had some good conversations around obesity, and, he has a lot of experience with that with his patients. And so I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Morgan.
Hi, guys.
Welcome.
Hello, hi.
You look great for 20 years old, as Shay had said. And you've been
Times
practicing
three,
for 30 years.
Thank you so much for being here. See, I didn't give away any embarrassing secrets or anything. I tried to keep it nice and all of that.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope I can be helpful.
Yes. Well, as you know, our podcast is really focused around, each of us on here, me, Rob, and Murph, we've all had bariatric surgery to help fight against obesity. And so maybe if you could just start with introducing yourself, Dr. Morgan, some of the things that you enjoy and like, and then we'll get into the grilling a little bit, but maybe we'll start with you as a person first.
I'll be ready for the grilling. I'm actually born and raised in Southern Oregon. Even my parents were born and raised in Southern Oregon. So I'm a local yokel. I like everything about Southern Oregon, skiing. I'd like it to be a little warmer right now. I'm ready for spring. But other than that, I work too much. I've been a doctor for a very long time. And my biggest problem is I work too much. But that's kind of me.
Awesome. Well, we can jump in. Are you okay if we just jump into questions?
Absolutely. I'll do my best.
Awesome. Well, I know it's something that a lot of people within the bariatric community or people who struggle with obesity haven't had the best experience with doctors. And so it's rare that people feel open to talking with providers, about obesity, because there's, I think, a lot of shame wrapped up in it. A lot of, you should be doing this, and this better. Could you just kind of paint the picture for us on, as a physician, how you view obesity and what that means for you as a practicing clinician?
I think most physicians view obesity fairly similar. Our teachings vary from, our programs, but, I have evolved my thinking. I've had to evolve my thinking, and I like to think of it like a pyramid. The way we were taught to deal with obesity many, many years ago was to sort of think of it like any other condition. Start out with, you need to diet, you need to exercise, you need to eat less. And that was really my mantra for most of the 20 years. Then I started noticing patients who I've been talking to about it like that. We generally were not successful. And some of my patients were very large, 400 or 500 pounds, and died from their obesity, that died from the complications of obesity. And it kind of it shook my world. And to me, up to 10 years ago, I would say bariatric surgery was my last resort. I would like to say I flipped the pyramid in the last 10 years. Bariatric is probably one of my first resorts, especially for my large people, because I can sit there and tell them they've got to lose weight. But I often like to say it's like telling them they've got to fly to the moon to stay alive. They can't. If it was that easy to fly to the moon, they would have already done it. And so bariatric surgery for me has gone from last choice to nearly first choice.
I love that. And I appreciate the candor with that, because I think many docs that practice for a long time, there can be an element of pride there of not wanting to adapt or change how they view things. But as more research comes out, as different things are trialed, that's kind of what medicine is, right? It's evolving and learning and trying different things. And so I just want to call that out, that I appreciate your humility in that, because it does take humility to go, oh, that didn't work as good before, and this is working better, so this is what I'm going to do. That's really cool.
Well, it's when you lose friends, it does make you reevaluate your approach.
Mhm.
And I've lost a number of friends over the years from weight, dear friends. So it's kind of obesity is my enemy, and I do what I can to try to defeat the enemy.
Dr. Morgan, you mentioned some of your patients and close friends passing due to complications from obesity. What are some of the biggest health risks with being morbidly obese? And I think the reason I ask that is I think many of us suffered or currently suffer from these comorbidities. And oftentimes, as I've learned with this whole bariatric community, we often think we're alone in this. And I think more often than not, we are very similar to each other. So, yeah, what can you share with us some of the biggest, I guess, challenges, risks that maybe those who are obese face?
Well, so as there are those young, generally healthy people who are very large and they have no comorbidities. They're the exception rather than the rule. That we and that when the recent guidelines came out from the American Academy of Pediatrics about obesity, they actually on national news had some of those healthy people that were very large saying there is no problem with obesity. And they clearly hadn't read the article or the guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics when they were being interviewed, because there's all kinds of causes that are beyond our control. So we're not saying when people are obese or very large that this is somehow a lifestyle choice. There's all kinds of causes, from socioeconomic, that to genetics. There's just all these other things that come into play. So again, it's not a judgmental thing. It is just a fact that obesity leads more commonly to these comorbidities like diabetes and hypertension and sleep apnea and heart disease, and arthritis of the knees and hips and knee replacements and hip replacements and all these complications that we really don't want to have. I've had patients so large, they've actually died because they've suffocated slowly over the years. It just, their chest couldn't take the weight. So we weren't designed to be that big.
Absolutely. And, that's something that and thank you, Dr. Morgan, for being here. And I love that we get to talk to you about these things, and your open-mindedness is just amazing. Thank you for doing this with us. Something that I attribute a lot of my obesity to was mental health. And, it would taking care of mental health, first and foremost, would you see a decrease in obesity? Is that cutting the head off the snake, do you think, or where, does it start there? I know that's a lot of different questions, but I feel like that plays a big role.
It does. You're totally right. In fact, most bariatric surgeons require a mental health consult before they'll even do the bariatric surgery, because if you don't address that issue, you can even fail the bariatric surgery. So we don't want to have a bariatric surgery and then figure out how to eat our way around it. That doesn't accomplish anything. So you're right. Mental health's a big issue, but it's a many-headed snake. So mental health is one of the heads. And so again, we don't want to ignore that one. That might be the most important one, but it is an important one. And I think it's key to mention that. It could be simply that someone was abused when they were young, and they don't even maybe remember it. It could be something they've suppressed, and they somehow eat to deal with that, whatever that is. And all of a sudden they're really large and they don't really know why. And unless we get to why they're eating, we haven't really solved anything.
I think that's helpful for me to hear too, because I maybe had a little bit of a different journey than other people. I mean, we all have unique journeys, but I did work a lot on my mental and emotional health prior to having surgery. And I think that's what was so frustrating, is I was eating foods to fuel my body, and that if anybody else who had a normal functioning metabolism, they would have been completely normal in that sense, a normal weight. So I was eating right. I was, moving my body. I was working on mental and emotional things and working through trauma. Oops, sorry. The dogs wanted to say hi. And then even with all of those things, though, I still would not lose weight. And a lot of that, was due to hormones and my genetics. And so I think I like how you painted that with its multiple-headed snake.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And so one thing I'm going to piggyback on what Murph and Shay had brought up, after someone, whether they have bariatric surgery or whether they lose the weight with diet, exercise, things of that nature, a lot of the other physical comorbidities do clear up or they get better and they progress. But something that I think I've observed and I've seen is the struggle with mental health for post-bariatric patients is still very prevalent. And so I guess, is that something that you've observed in your practice? And is there something that you attribute it specifically to, or do you think it's just something that may not be addressed as openly as something as like hypertension or diabetes or whatever the case might be?
Well, I think you're right on. And I don't know how, maybe we again have to change our mindset a little bit. We kind of look at the obesity kind of like hypertension or diabetes. If we can tackle it and their weight's down, ta-da, we're happy, let's move on to the next issue. But you're right, for many people, the mental health part got us there. And you don't fix the mental health part generally overnight. And so if you're not constantly working on the mental health part, you're right back down the same path. And we all know that you can eat your way around bariatric surgery and gain all the weight back. So we have to, I think, most of us are always trying to get mentally more healthy, to have better mental well-being, just to always work on that. I'm better than I was 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, I was better than 10 years before that. I think it's a constant evolution or struggle. And we generally don't do that in medicine. You get the bariatric surgery. Look, you lost 100 pounds. You got off all your diabetic medicines. You got off your high blood pressure medicines. Yay, see you sometime when you need me. And then they come back and they've gained it all back. So we've got to work on the whole picture. You're absolutely right. And we don't do that very well.
Well, and I think it just goes to show, one thing that I didn't realize when going into bariatric surgery is that there's such a huge community of people who have shared experiences. And that's what binds so many of us together. And so, I don't necessarily know if that is the role of providers and doctors' offices, because you have to kind of I've worked in healthcare for my whole career pretty much. And it's like, I know what goes on in the clinics, and there's a lot of really sick patients that you're working with all the time. Of course, things can be done better. We all know that. But I think there's just an opportunity for the patients to kind of rise up and, kind of come together, support each other in that way. And a question I have for you, Dr. Morgan, thinking through that, what advice would you give to a person who is wanting to advocate for themselves in a healthcare setting, somebody who probably, doesn't understand medical jargon super well, maybe feels intimidated by their doctor or provider, but they know that they need help. Let's just use bariatric surgery or obesity as this, diagnosis or example. What advice can you share for people that are in that position right now?
Well, the cool part, if they recognize it, maybe they can help their provider recognize it. So, if they're thinking, gosh, I think my mental health plays a role in my weight. I think it helped me get where I am in obesity or whatever the condition. Gosh, whoever my provider is, I go in and see him and say, I think it's playing a role. What do you think? How innocent is that? How could the provider not be receptive to that? Saying, I think my mental health is playing a role in whatever. Can you help me find resources to work on that?
And I was just going to say, if they do have a problem with that, that's probably not a good provider to see.
Right.
To change. But there are some providers out there who kind of take more of that approach. And I know people in the community have expressed they've experienced that, of even just with an innocent question like that, them going, oh, no, you're fine. You just need to eat better and lose weight, and can be dismissive. And I think you're just bringing to light that, well, if that's the response, they probably need to find a different provider, or, that doesn't seem like a good response, I don't think.
And I do like to bring up, and you had mentioned this, Dr. Morgan, is I think there has to be a lot of accountability on ourselves to have that conversation with our provider. I think, and I think that there are a lot of reasons for this. I think some are cultural, some are, a lot of them are going to be, society based. And I feel like there are a lot of people who will not be forthcoming with their physician about things that they're feeling or the extent that they're feeling certain ways. And I think, I think that we all have to be responsible for that, right? So we need to advocate for ourselves. So if we have issues with mental health, or we suspect that, or we have certain things that are attributing to weight gain or struggle to lose that weight, I think it's one thing to say, yeah, I went to the doctor, but I think it's another thing to be able to go to the doctor and have a candid conversation with all the details and all the information, because I think that's a big part of it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, and from a physician's perspective, Dr. Morgan, you've been around the block for a few years. You've gotten to see a lot of change in the medical community. And what advice would you give to other practicing physicians or providers who are primary care, who have patients that are struggling with obesity? Any advice that you could share to them, just with your experience?
I think, all providers are on their own personal journey. Some are overweight themselves. So, one of my dear friends was a very large physician, and he struggled mightily with it, but he could give really good advice, but he would personally struggled himself. So I think all of us are on the same journey. We all have basically the same goal, to get mentally and physically healthy. So we're going to arrive at that destination of that journey at different times. So some providers might come right out of their training and be good at this, and other providers are probably work in progress. I think maybe using the example of the GLP-1s, the new wonder weight loss shot, there are some providers who will prescribe it, and there are some that won't. And, if you kind of think about it, we're all got the same goal. We wanted the patient to get healthy. We want the patient to get to a healthier weight. We want to prevent them from being diabetic and having the complication of diabetes. We don't want knee replacements and hip replacements and heart disease. We got the same goal. Then why is a medicine like that somewhat accepted by some providers and not by others? And I think because, we see how expensive it is. We go, oh my God, that's expensive. But at the same time, if our goal is to get the weight down, if our goal is to get them mentally and physically healthy, it's just one more arrow in the quill. So, I look at it as, no one made us gatekeepers for the finances. Our job is to take care of our people, and our people have lots of different needs. So if our people need something, that's in the arrow that's in the quill, we should try to get them that arrow.
Yeah.
And that actually opens up to my next question that I have for you. In our society, we have a lot of fad diets. We have a lot of different things, that are being offered. Atkins was big when I was a teenager. My parents were doing Atkins. I think that was after they did Weight Watchers, and then Weight Watchers making a comeback, but now they're pairing with a pill, Ozempic or something like that. And so, like, what if somebody is not ready for bariatric surgery? Say one of our listeners, they aren't at the place of bariatric surgery, but they need to start taking control of their life, or they will get to that place. How do you, what sort of advice do you give them, instead of just saying diet and exercise? What is your typical, and I know everybody's different, but what do you recommend? Any sort of specific diets or books, or
So it's a fun one, and I'll try to make it quick, but one of my professors wrote a diet book, and it was a bestseller, and his wife was dean of the School of Dietitians, and she co-authored it, and it was a bestseller probably about the time you guys were born. But anyway, it was a really good book, and they were asked at a conference, besides your book, what's the best diet out there? And the person who was dean of the School of Dietitians at OHSU gave the long answer about, it needs to be medically healthy and it needs to be, achievable. And, and the guy that was the doctor, he said, whatever works for you. So he said, if you do the Atkins diet and it works for you, that's a good diet. If you do the Atkins diet and it doesn't work for you, it's not a good diet. So whether it was paleo or South Beach or Atkins or Pritkin or intermittent fasting, you name it, the best diet is, on my mind, always been what works for you. The key is to finding that. Some of those aren't real medically sound, that we don't go, oh, I love that one. But if it works for somebody, I love that one. Is it something I maybe want them to be on forever? No. Probably of all the ones out there, intermittent fasting is my favorite and has been. It's more medically to my thinking than most of the others. And thankfully, it's kind of the hot ones right now. Patients generally, though, don't like to, they'll try some of those, sometimes wholeheartedly, sometimes half-heartedly. To me, the average patient will come in and go, I want fasting. I want a pill to lose weight. They want, it's a weak form of speed. And we've even had some deaths in the Valley from people prescribing those to people that probably shouldn't get prescribed those. So there's risk to some of the medicines out there, and it isn't just something that everybody can take. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. The diets out there are good ones, but the best one, I think, for that person is whichever one works.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Also, Dr. Morgan, you and I were talking, we were doing your blood pressure video, and what you said really stuck with me. You were talking about a patient and just kind of the advice that you gave this person, I thought was really helpful. And I was wondering if maybe you remembered and could share it again. But it was someone who had been struggling with their weight and was kind of, would come back, hadn't lost any weight. They were doing a lot of what what you were recommending they do. And you kind of walked through like, well, we could do this, but then this would happen. Do you remember what conversation I'm talking about?
I think so. I think it's the one where it's one of my favorite bariatric stories. And
Yeah.
It was a very large patient, was on very high dose insulin for his diabetes, probably the highest I've ever seen, something like 300 units a day. We weren't getting good control on 300 units a day. He was on 3 or 4 blood pressure medicines. We had all the conversations about trying different diets. We weren't losing anything. He had the bariatric surgery. It actually took us a while. It was a fight with his insurance company. It probably took us over a year to get it approved. He got the bariatric surgery. We got him completely off the insulin. We got him completely off all his blood pressure medicines. He was on nothing. He was just a regular person again on no meds. And, we had been doing diabetes visits 4, 5, 6 times a year and not making any headway, and blood pressure that was scaring us. And he was going to have a heart attack any day. Had the bariatric surgery and it all went poof. Is that the one?
Yeah. Well, and what stood out to me, and you had said it, I appreciate your empathic approach, because you said something along the lines, or what stuck out to me was, we could keep trying to do this. If that's something that you want, where you want to keep trying to do exercise, doing, eating differently, having medications, that's your choice. We can do it. But this is just what research has shown me. This is kind of what I think might be the best next step, but it's really up to you. What do you want to do? And that's, I think, what stood out the most to me is that I feel like what makes you such a great physician is you have all the knowledge, or a lot of the knowledge, you have the information and the research, and you're guiding people to make decisions for themselves. And I think that's huge. We're not all providers do that. And so I more just wanted to call that out, because that's, I think, a really important quality when people are seeking out advice from, a medical team or a dietitian or mental health practitioner, anybody. I always say, I know what's best for my body. I just want to get all the information so I can make the decision for myself. And I think you just do a really good job of that. So that's what I wanted to highlight, because if you are working with people who just tell you what to do and don't really get your input or guide you, for me at least, that always raises a red flag where I'm like, ooh, I'm not going to take what that person has to say. I'm going to take that with a grain of salt because they're trying to sell me on something. I don't know why. And that doesn't feel good. So that's more of what I was wanting to call out, but you do a really good job with that.
Thank you.
Dr. Morgan, so this is sort of in line with some of the discussions we've been having. So when one is trying to regain their health, and whether it's through weight loss surgery or weight loss in general without the surgery, I find that often people have a very all or nothing sort of approach. And if they slip on one aspect of it, whether it be I missed a workout, or I ate a cookie, or whatever the case might be, I didn't drink enough water, I didn't hit my protein numbers, whatever the case, they tend to get really hard on themselves. And so my question is, what would you consider some of the priorities when you are trying to follow something that, because all of us will slip at some point, and sometimes often. And one thing I think through this bariatric community that we've learned is we tend to not be very kind to ourselves. We tend to be very hard on ourselves. And I think that is oftentimes why we fail and fail so hard. And so what would you consider some of the main priorities to look at, whether it's, getting enough sleep, or whether it's eating XXY, or whatever the case might be?
Well, I like to take the approach of what's sustainable, meaning,
right,
if you are on a diet that is 500 calories a day and you're suffering, you're not going to stay on it. It's just a matter of when you're coming off and if you're ever going back on it. Or if you are not allowing yourself cookies, is that sustainable? I think the key is not, you can't have cookies. You just can't have 12 at a time. You
100%.
can have your cookie. You just minimize it, or you can have your birthday cake on your birthday. We just don't need birthday cake on the nights that aren't our birthday. So I think you approach it as what I'm doing sustainable. Am I fulfilled and able to keep waking up and doing this and feeling fulfilled with the current regimen that I'm on? And if I can't, it's not going to work, no matter what it is.
I love it. That makes absolute sense, for sure.
All things in moderation, and that's definitely something that we talk about a lot. You can have your cake and eat it too, but yeah, I love how you said, not when it's not your birthday. Yeah, and you go, yeah, don't eat the whole cake.
Just a small
take
cake.
a little slice, and that's something that I've had to learn on my journey. I'm almost 2 years post-op, and I used to love pizza, and now the pizza cutter is my best friend. I've got 3 of them actually, and I've got these pizza cutters, and I just go in and I slice a pizza, a slice of pizza in half and a breadstick in half and a little bit of dipping sauce, and I go sit down and I enjoy it, and I'm satisfied. I've tasted it. I've enjoyed it, and my mouth is watering talking about it as we speak.
Leave it to Murph.
I want some pizza. Going back to something that Shay had said, your empathetic approach to your patients. We jumped right in with all the questions, as we usually do. We get so excited to have new friends on our podcast, and I just want to take a little quick time out and just ask you, where does this empathetic approach come from? Why are you a doctor? What led you here to this practice that's been so successful for the past 30 years? Why does Shay speak so highly of you? And she's had nothing but good things to say about you. What makes you you?
I look at other primary care docs, and the ones that I have are friends are exactly the same. And I can't understand any other different mentality. We are a team. We are partners in this with the same goals. And we should lift each other up and try to get to those goals, however it takes to get to those goals. If you lose, I lose. If you win, I win. I think that, to me, it's how everyone should be. My son is graduating from medical school here in a few weeks. and he's going into family practice as well. And I look at him and I go, there's hope for primary care. He's even more empathetic than I am. So, I have hope. I have hope.
Well, and I know you've done a lot of work within, the company that we work for. There's a lot of providers people in general, but providers specifically, who are just struggling. Like, they're burnt out. There's I think sometimes it's easy to, call out all of the negative things that people have seen when it comes to physicians. But could you kind of peel back the curtain a little bit? And I know a lot of the things that you as a doc and other docs, because I work with them, face. But what makes it hard to care for patients? Like, what are some of the things that make you roll your eyes and go, oh my gosh, like, this is so frustrating that I have to deal with this? Because I think that might shed a little bit more light on that for people who get frustrated with the process.
Well, I think part of it's how we choose our doctors. For the most part, in the past, it was, really smart kids who just did well on tests. They applied to medical school. They got in. They might not have any social skills. They might not have any friends, but they got into medical school without their social skills, without ever having friends. And they go into some specialty and they've never really talked to anybody. They've never held meaningful conversations. Now they're supposed to learn to have meaningful conversations and listen. That's foreign to some people. Some of our really good surgeons in the Valley are probably on the spectrum. That's okay. They aren't really good at meaningful conversations. That's okay. They'll hire somebody that'll talk for them. We need their surgical skills. It's partly how we selected the doctors. We're getting better with the younger doctors. We're trying to get whole people who have lives and experiences like everybody else. But interestingly, we're still having very few people go into primary care. So, maybe it's the perverse incentives of, we don't pay primary care very much, so I can make 3 times as much if I go into ophthalmology. I'm going into ophthalmology. We're trying to get it right, but maybe the incentives aren't right. So we're not getting as many nice people as we want in primary care to listen to people. But I think part of the problem was historical. Part of the problem is the incentives at this point. We're incentivized to see more. So I don't have as much time to talk to you about all the things you want to talk about today, because I really need to get on to see that next patient. It isn't a good system.
Yeah. And with that too, again, just kind of peeling the veil back a little bit, can you tell people kind of what like a normal day looks like for you as a doc, like from when you start to when you end? This is you're one doc of many, but just to kind of let people into what your day looks like in that way.
So I usually get to the office between 6:30 and 7, and I'm dealing with all my messages and things from the day before. If we're lucky, I start on time at 8. I always work through the lunch hour. It's part of my weight loss program, is working through the lunch hour. I don't know what I'll do when I do retire, because I won't have my main weight loss mechanism of being too busy for breakfast and too busy for lunch. And sometimes we run into the evening, and you see the people that want to be seen. Partly at my point in my career, I'm not working to see more because I want to make more. I'm working to try to fit in all my friends who need to be fit in on that day. And those days sometimes get long, but I call it like an all day sprint, running as fast as you can from patient to patient.
Yeah. And about how many patients do you see in a day? And I know yours is a bit higher than typical, but
typically about 32 a day.
Yeah. So I think that's just important to highlight too, and just to, again, shed light that as a patient coming in, we are just seeing you, but we're one of 32 people that you're having these conversations with in one day. Like that's a hard job and a big job to do. And so I think just like as patients, we want more empathy and respect from our providers. I think that needs to be there too. And I think at least what has come from this conversation is seeing, yes, you're Dr. Morgan, but you're also Chris, right? You're You're a human being who is growing and learning and, changing and doing new things. And I think sometimes, again, I think partially like of how I was taught growing up is like, nope, like doctors are robots. They just are really smart people who get the job done. And it's like, no, we're all humans and we're all learning. And so I think it's just important that the empathy that we're hoping for from providers, like we need to have that for you guys as well.
Thank you. I think all of us as providers need to do a better job though on our empathy. And we don't have all the time in the world, but we should try. We should try to get the important questions answered always that the patients have.
Yeah.
This has been a very good conversation. I've really enjoyed this. So with my job, I speak to physicians and surgeons from a different point of view, and this is rarely the point of view I get to see, and I absolutely love hearing this, and even a lot of the comments. Justin had mentioned, I'm going to put it up here. You weren't kidding, Shay. Doc is great. Does he do Zoom calls? Might have to switch my primary. And then someone said, right, Justin? Wonder if he'll move to Canada. That was actually me. That was me. I can't hide it. We definitely want to respect your time because I know, as we know, he is very, very busy. I do want to ask a question because this tends to be a hot topic in weight loss in general and with the bariatric community often. And it is the idea of BMI. When the term or the word or acronym BMI is said, it is met with scowls all over the place from the bariatric community. Everyone's, BMI doesn't matter. Obviously, certain things have specific places for specific reasons. Can you explain BMI a bit more for people who may not have a full understanding of what the purpose of it is, please?
Well, some people might be old like me, and they might remember when we talked about weight versus your body build. So we would have, a medium body build and a stocky body build and a light body build. And we said we had 3 different curves. So for this height with this build, your weight should be X. They tried to get away from that because what they found is the doctors were generally the one picking the body build. And when they independently went and looked at what the doctors were doing, it was incredibly arbitrary. So they said, okay, that's not working. We need something more objective. And then BMI is basically weight for height. That's all the calculation is. But it doesn't really take into account, again, body types and genetics and, build. And so we've kind of gone the other way, having left the body types. We've gone the other way to now having this imperfect system with BMI. So I think currently most people are trying to get away from BMI. They know it's not perfect, but it's better than what we had before. It is one of the hoops that we have to jump through to qualify for bariatric surgery. It's currently one of the measures we use to say what is obesity, what is overweight, what is morbid obesity, when do we qualify for bariatric, when do we not. So it's a tool we use, but it's a tool that can make you crazy.
Yes. On both ends, I assume.
I have one more question too. Are we doing okay, Dr. Morgan? Okay, just let us know if you're like, we usually go for like an hour, but if you need to hop off early, you just kind of give us a signal and we're good with that. But I know that you specialize in pediatrics also, and just like to paint the picture for people, you can have people that are family medicine physicians, which see, cradle to grave, as we say. Then you have internal medicine physicians who see usually people who are 18 years and older. And then you have pediatricians who usually see 18 years and younger. Dr. Morgan has more, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you can, I'll have you explain it on that you see internal medicine and pediatrics. But what my question is kind of looping around to is obesity within pediatrics, just kind of a broad thing and what your thoughts are with that.
So real quick, it's the easiest way to think of it is I'm what's called a med peds doctor. And that's basically just another kind of family doc. Back in the 70s, they were trying to create sort of the perfect primary care docs. One pathway was family medicine. Another pathway was med peds. Med peds tends to be a little bigger on the East Coast, a little less on the West Coast, but it's now kind of everywhere. It's just my training. But you're absolutely right. Pediatrics and obesity is a huge issue. When I left LA 30 years ago to come to Southern Oregon, we had something called Kids Shape. And it was, you could refer to it any time. It was dietitians, it was physical therapists and exercise specialists. And it was a wonderful program. It didn't matter on your insurance. If you had a kid that needed Kids Shape, you would just make the referral and, you had a partner. So I moved to Southern Oregon 30 years ago, saw some of my first big kids, and I went, okay, where's our Kids Shape program in Southern Oregon? There isn't one. There still isn't one. There isn't anywhere to refer. You are it for pediatrics. It is your problem to solve. And, I looked, it's still in California. They still got Kids Shape, and it's a very strong program in California. We need that in every state. We don't have it here. That's what the American Academy of Pediatrics article that came out in January that caused such a stir. It basically said, pediatricians, we got this epidemic of obesity. It starts in childhood. We got to help these people now. We can't wait, pass it on to the internist. We got to deal with it. So, and again, some people didn't read it. Some people were offended by the pediatricians becoming involved, but I think it starts there usually. So let's talk about it there. And we're not saying we're signing everybody up for pediatric bariatric surgery or anybody, but we should be talking about it and working on it and not waiting until they're older having comorbidities before we try to fix it.
Yeah, well, and because I think about when I was a young kid, like I have obesity very strong genetically. Both sides of my family have it very prominently. And so growing up as a kid, I was always kind of at the higher end percentile. I was like the biggest kid, like in all of elementary school and stuff. And someone had asked a question here that goes along with that, but when is it time to start addressing that? And because it can be so genetically driven, how do you even start with that?
Well, this week, I saw a 11-year-old that was 250 and a 14-year-old older brother that I think was closer to 3. And the blessing for both of them that they haven't stopped growing. So, I think our first order of business is to not gain any more weight so they can try to grow into their weight. That's the first one. And again, if we had a program like Kids Shape, they would be like, we need to get the mom thinking healthy diets. We need to get healthy snacks. We need to get healthy activities. We gotta jump on it. But I think most of it is, especially in Oregon, who are pediatricians, there are no resources other than us. So when those kids come in, I've got 4 after you before I get to go home. You guys just try to exercise more. There isn't the time or the incentive or anything to really work with those kids. We really need a team. And especially in pediatrics, we don't got a team. Yeah. We can't refer them to a dietitian because they don't have diabetes yet. We can't refer them for a exercise program because they don't got diabetes or hypertension or anything yet. They're on their way. And that's why the American Academy of Pediatric Guidelines that came out in January said, we got to jump on this. This is an epidemic. This is important. And we got to address it in childhood. And if we're not addressing it in childhood, we're missing our biggest opportunity.
Right. And so what would your recommendations be to parents then? What's kind of your spiel, so to speak, of parents who have kids that are maybe in that, obesity range or kind of approaching that? What are kind of the best steps they can take in helping their kiddos with this?
Well, it's delicate because the kids are usually getting shamed at school. And so, at the same time, you want to affirm these kids and make them feel positive. But at the same time, they're facing this elephant in the room, which is their weight and their eventual problems with that weight. So you don't want to come in like everybody else. It would be really easy to go, you're too big. You got to fix this, because the kids at school have shamed them. They would love to fix it. That would be their first, third, second, fourth choice. They want to fix this. So I think, again, we let parents know you telling them they need to lose weight isn't going to help. Me telling them they need to lose weight isn't going to help. We got to start working on the whole package. Rob was mentioning the mental health part. We got to start talking about that part because it's becoming a big part. They're being shamed at school. They're being made fun of at school. That's breaking down this wonderful human being. So it's unfortunately, I think, particularly in Southern Oregon, we got no options other than whoever their primary care they're lucky enough or unlucky enough to have. That's it.
Yeah. And, I'm not a parent, but I am a kid, or, I've been a child at one point. And I think the one thing that has been the most impactful to me, I was just talking to my husband about this last week too, is the words that we're saying to ourselves and the words that we're saying to our kids. So like an example could be if your kiddos, are going up a pant size, right? Instead of coming in and being like, oh, but it's time to move to like the husky pant size or something like that, right? And, it could be coming from a playful place, but like, what is that communicating, right? Like a lot of shame, like, oh, that's weird that you're doing that. And so I think just one idea, like I would like to, when I'm a parent, I would like to approach it like, oh, wow, like we need new pants. Like, our body's kind of changing and growing and let's go get some new pants. Like, how do you feel about that? And kind of talk with them more in that way where making sure that they know that their worth isn't tied into that. Right.
Absolutely.
Just because we're getting, different clothes and different sizes, like, that doesn't change our worth. And I, even asking them, like, if I've worn different sizes my whole life, like, does that mean that I'm not worthy depending on the size I'm wearing? Hopefully they'd say no, but kids can be brutal. Maybe they wouldn't, but, just starting to piece that together for them, that your worth is not defined on what you look like, what you wear, all of that. So just a little tidbit that could maybe be helpful. I know as a kiddo, that would have been really nice to hear.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Most of these kids are far harder on themselves than we are. They already know they're different from their peers. They already, find school difficult because of that. And maybe don't even want to go to school, or maybe they're studying more because they don't have to deal with anything. So, us coming in and saying you're overweight, even how do you feel about that, is delicate. I like to tell parents to look for opportunities, healthy opportunities. And I give them an example. My oldest daughter was the largest girl in her class, her entire grade school. And I joke that, she was just a really good eater. She and I could polish off a half gallon of ice cream like that anytime. That was our special father-daughter time. But she also got to be pretty big. And one day, and she was busy being a kid, and one day she came home because some of the kids she knew that were going to try out for cross country. And she said to me, I'd like to try out for cross country. And my wife answered initially and goes, we don't have time for that. And I thought, we don't not have time for that. Just the opposite. If she's even somewhat interested in something healthy, how far can I go with her to make that happen? If she's all of a sudden reads The Jungle, which is this terrible book that kids read in junior high, and she wants to be a vegetarian, how far can I go to make her happy a vegetarian? How can I meet these healthy choices that come along that they experience and embrace them instead of discourage them? And so that's what I try to get parents to do, is to look for these healthy opportunities, because these kids are generally beating themselves up already.
Yeah, I love that. See, you're a dad too, and it shows.
I think we have time for maybe another question or so. I know I have a question. Shay or Murph, do you guys have anything else? You guys are good? All right.
Yeah.
Dr. Morgan, my question is, I think if you were to leave, because the majority of our audience obviously are people who are either losing weight or trying to lose weight or have had bariatric surgery. We've talked about numerous benefits of losing weight. And a lot of times we tend to focus on the number on the scale and what that means sort of aesthetically. If you were to leave us with sort of what your view is of the biggest benefit, or some of the biggest benefits to losing weight overall. What would you share with us?
I would first phrase it by saying that I think it's probably the biggest health issue facing Americans. So this is by no means that people are alone. This is the biggest health issue facing Americans. So, this is like, our country may go broke because we have so many obese people that need care because we didn't deal with it when they were younger and we could have dealt with it. So to me, I guess the first thing is I get it when they're those rare, very healthy people that are very large and they are ashamed or they are mad that we're talking about it the way we are. But I would say, there's always the exception that their health seems great. Their knees are good. Their hips are fine. They're not a diabetic. But darn it, the rest of us aren't usually like that. And the rest of us are having high blood pressure, and the rest of us are having diabetes and getting knee replacements and hip replacements and having chronic back pain and not able to, and getting disability because I've gotten so big I can't even go to work. That's unfortunately most of us. We're not that amazing person that can be big and not have problems. Most of us have problems. So I guess what I would leave it is, I think maybe it's as Americans is we all see that person that's large and they got no health problems. We're like, I want to be them, or I want to be skinny and not have health problems. But that can happen in both. I think we just realize that the odds are against us if we're heavy. We're playing with a loaded gun. We're playing with a stacked deck. So we want to do the things in our life that will help us be healthy, live longer, live fuller lives. Maybe when we're 25, we don't think about when we're 50, but before you know it, you'll be 65, and it just happens like that. So I think I would say that, our people should look at obesity as something that can be fixed, that we want to help them fix it, that it's not easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't be talking, we wouldn't be doing this. It's hard. It's very hard. And any tool that we have in our toolbox to make it work is a tool worth having. Any tool, whatever it is. And maybe the most effective tool is bariatric surgery. And so it shouldn't be last on our list. It definitely shouldn't be last on our list.
Well said.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, thank you, Dr. Morgan, for joining us and sharing with us your time, your expertise, your empathy, and your candor on the subject. And for me, I can speak personally, this has easily been one of my favorite episodes that we've had. I kept looking back at the time and having a mini freak out because I'm like, oh my God, we're almost done. Not remembering that we've changed the time for this specific episode. I'm like, how are we almost at the hour already? But no, this was an amazing episode. So thank you very much, Dr. Morgan.
Thank you. We're on the same team. We got trying to get the same message out.
100%.
Yeah.
Shay, can you share with us what is next on the ticket for March Madness, please?
Yes. Well, Dr. Morgan, you're welcome to stay, but if you want to hop off to get to your next patients, totally cool. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you at work.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So March Madness, guys, we're wrapping up. So tonight we have happy hour, and we're going to do the full hour. So on Instagram Live, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you guys are our guests. So we're going to try to get as many people as we can to hop on, see how you're doing. We can talk about this episode. We can talk about poop is always a topic that seems to come up. Whatever you guys want to talk about, we're going to bring our drinks. We're going to just chill, kind of unwind and, kind of talk about the week. That's what I'm thinking we're doing. I don't know. Am I missing anything? But I'm just excited to hang out.
Shay's probably going to bring a surprise game for us all to play that we have 100%. To play.
I hadn't thought about it, but now that you bring it up,
thanks, Mark.
I'll think about it.
Dang it.
You did it. Done did it now.
Yeah. And then starting next week, we're going to be back kind of in our sort of normal routine. Wait, before I say that, we have something kind of weird next week, right?
Yeah, we're gonna do something
Hold on. Let me pull up
possible.
our schedule here. Sorry. Bad podcast host. I should have had this
Right?
prepared. Let's see. So next week, that's right. It's going to be, oh, wait. Next week. Okay, no. We're going back to our original thing, but in April, we will have a couple different things.
Yeah.
You guys just go on Instagram. We keep you guys updated on there. We'll tell you what's coming up. I did this on purpose to keep it a surprise and a mystery. So,
Yeah, I like it.
so yeah.
Veil of mystery. That's good.
That's right.
That's good. Yeah, so it's going to be a fun one. April's going to be fun. March has been awesome. Justin said he's going to see us tonight. He might skip the gym for this one. That's big time for
Ooh,
Justin. Thank you so
wow.
much. And anyone else wants to jump on and join us tonight, it is going to be a fun one. So again, thank you, Dr. Morgan. Thanks you guys. And thank you everyone for joining us for our final episode of March Madness on the Waiting Table, where we're serving the weight loss community
1 pound at a time.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you. March Madness.
March Madness. Where's the music?
Oops.
We have music.
We have March Madness music.
Usually play some
I was
music
thinking of like
here.
football, like fight music.
I remember that from my cheerleading days.
Oh my
Bye,
god.
guys.
All right, guys. Have a good night. See you tonight.
See you
Thank
later. See you tonight.